All right, so I guess we can get started. Benson, go take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aldo. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for showing up today. And obviously we at NestMade Mortgage, we are trying to come up with more different content to help the public understand a little bit more about a couple of things, right? Like, and these topic when we're coming out with is really answering not just one person, because we get a lot of questions about one topic and then we're like, well, how can we expand it and let other people know about it as well? So really the purpose of this and the importance of this today is to spread the knowledge on what the county assessor office does, and a lot of questions about ADU, a lot of questions about the new Prop 19 that came into effect in February and April of 2021. It was voted in 2020, and even till today, a lot of people are still having a lot of questions when it comes to transferring title, seniors buying their next house, or downsizing, upsizing. There's a lot of questions about building an ADU in the backyard. Can I buy a house with an ADU permitted, unpermitted? So I think today we are joined by Robert Isozaki. Thank you so much for coming. He is I'll let you introduce yourself. And guys, we're going to have a full agenda today for today's meeting. We're going to talk about a lot of what the county assessor, LA County Assessor does. And a lot of this is also applied to throughout the whole California too. It's not just LA County. The ADU is also applied to other counties as well. The Prop 19 is also applied to other counties as well. So take it away, Robert.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Benson, thanks for having us. We're always happy to come and share some of the information about the programs that our department administers with our partners. But let me share my screen real quick. We've got a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, and are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, yes. Great. So we're going to talk about two main things today. One is going to be ADUs, like Benson said, and then the other is going to be about Prop 19, the new law related to intergenerational transfers and base year value transfers. But the kind of what we had planned on talking about first are ADUs. And a common question is, for our office, if I build an ADU in my backyard, are my property taxes going to go up? And the short answer is probably yes, but we wanted to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what the assessor's office does, how the construction of ADUs comes into play as far as the valuation of your property and the associated property taxes. So first of all, what is it that the assessor's office does? Well, we're responsible for the location and valuation of all taxable property in LA County. And that includes real property, things that you're probably well aware of, condos, single family residences, commercial property, rental property, things like that. But in addition, there are also things called business personal property. Those don't have so much to do with ADUs, but it's things that business owners use to run their business equipment, furniture. It also includes things like boats and aircrafts. So any of those items that we just talked about in LA County, we're responsible for coming up with the value. The significance of that value that we place on the property is that value is used to calculate your annual property taxes. So every year you get that bill for your house or rental property in October. That figure that you'll see somewhere on the bill, it says assessed value, land and improvements. That's going to be the part of that bill that is due to the assessor's job. So just a little bit background on what our general function is, but now we'll get into, if I were to build an ADU, what is going to happen. But before we get to that, I just want to touch on kind of the guiding principle or the main piece of California law that we rely on at the assessor's office. So it's called Prop 13. You may have heard of it. Essentially what it says is when you buy your home, we establish the value of that home. It may be it's oftentimes the purchase price, but not always. So we establish that as, it's called your base year value or your tax base. And every year it can go up a maximum of 2%. So essentially, the taxes that you're paying, or the value that you're paying your taxes on, should increase incrementally, so you're never caught off guard with a giant jump in your property taxes. So that is stable year after year. Your property can get pulled out of that incremental increase system when a couple of different events occur. The first is change in ownership. That's when you transfer the property, you sell it, you gift it to a family member, to certain family members, and then also when there's new construction that's completed on the property, and that has to do with a little bit more with ADUs. So one thing to note about new construction is if it takes place over a multi-year period, every year on January 1st, we'll go and check in on the property to see what the status is. So if you completed 10% of the new construction, we will add on whatever the value of that 10% of whatever the value of that total new construction is going to be in the future. So we reassess both on partial new construction and on total new construction. And then finally, this last bit that we have here, decline in value, it doesn't necessarily relate to Prop 19 or ADUs, but essentially it's a program that says, or it's a program or proposition that was passed that says that if your assessed value in a given, or if the market value of your home in a given year is worth less than the Prop 13 value, basically your sales price plus that 2% increase, you can file with our office for what's called a Prop 8 decline in value. And so the law requires us to enroll as your taxable value for any given year, the lower of either the market value or your adjusted Prop 13 value. So normally it's going to be that Prop 13 value. That's kind of what safeguards from giant increases. But say you have a downturn in the market and the market value goes down and dips down below the Prop 13 value, you would want to go ahead and apply for that. And that's located in the form section of our website, the Prop 8 decline in value form. But kind of the main event of today's topics, ADUs. So what happens when you complete an ADU? What do we do at the assessor's office? So essentially, the construction of an ADU in your backyard is the same as any other type of new construction, whether it be the addition of an extra bedroom, extra bathroom, a pool, a guest house. It essentially is a guest house, but it falls under the category of new construction. And the way that we value new construction at the assessor's office is we determine what the value of the newly constructed or converted structure is. So if you build from the ground up, whatever it costs to build that structure from the ground up, or if you convert a garage, whatever it costs to convert that garage into a habitable ADU, we'll take those costs using what's called the cost approach. We'll come up with the value of that structure, and we will add it on to the existing assessed value for the pre-existing land and improvements. So it's a little bit wordy, but I have an example here that talks about, that kind of walks us through with some value information. So say you own a home, it's got a large backyard, and you decide that you're going to add an ADU. The home and the land itself before the ADU is worth $1 million. That's what you're paying your taxes on. You build an ADU, we get informed of the new construction completion via building permits and other certifications through the city's building and safety departments. We value the new ADU at $200,000. After we've reassessed your property, you will be paying your taxes on $1.2 million now, not $1 million anymore. So I guess the key takeaway is when we reassess your property based on new construction, we just assess the new construction. We don't reassess the rest of the property. So sometimes people get concerned, oh, if I know, when I bought my home, it was worth $500,000. It's now worth $1 million. If I build an ADU, is it going to jump all the way up to $1 million? Not necessarily. It's really going to be contingent on the value placed on that ADU that's constructed. So we've included here a link or the web address for our accessory dwelling unit page on the assessor's website. A lot of helpful information there. So if you have any questions, I would encourage you to take a look at that first. That may have some answers to some of the frequently asked questions that we get at our office. So that's kind of the basics of ADUs. If you have questions at the end, we can talk a little bit more about the details, but essentially that's the general assessment process that we go through. The other topic that Benson asked us to discuss today is Prop 19. And as he pointed out, it's a ballot measure that was passed by California voters in November of 2020, came into effect in February and April of 2021, and it made changes to two existing property tax savings programs. One had to do with base year value transfers. So essentially, certain property owners with disabilities, senior property owners, and victims of natural disasters and wildfires, they are able to sell their current home, buy a replacement home, and transfer their lower tax base from that first home to their replacement home. So for that particular program, there were a number of expansions to the pre-existing benefit. So under the old law, you were only able to transfer your tax base to a replacement property located into one of about 10 participating counties. Now you can sell your original home and purchase a home located anywhere in California, and you can transfer your tax base over. Also, under the old law, you were only able to take advantage of that benefit once, maybe twice under very limited circumstances. Under Prop 19, you're able to do it up to 3 times. And then finally, the expansion that, from my experience, will probably be the most beneficial for people is previously under the old law, when you purchased a replacement dwelling, its market value had to be less than the market value that you sold your original property for. So say, for example, you sold your original home for $100,000 and you bought a replacement home for $100,001. Because the replacement home was more expensive, you would not qualify for that benefit at all. Under the new law, you're able to buy a replacement home of any value. It doesn't matter if it's less than or equal to or greater than the value that you sold your original home for. You can still transfer your tax base over. Now, the caveat if you buy a more expensive home is we will transfer your tax base over, but then we will add on the difference between the fair market value of your replacement dwelling and your original property. So say, for example, you sell your original home for $500,000. You purchase, but you were paying your taxes on $200,000. You bought it way back when. You purchase your replacement dwelling or replacement property for $700,000. You can transfer your $200,000 tax base over to your replacement property, but we'll have to adjust it upward, the difference between the sales price for your original property and the purchase price for your replacement property. So $200,000, 700,000 minus 500,000 is 200. So instead of paying on the fair market value for your new home, $700,000, you'll be paying on 200, your tax base, plus 200, the difference, so $400,000 instead. So that's a substantial tax savings every year. The last bit of information on these base year value transfers that we have has to do with the timing. So you must sell your original home and purchase your replacement home within 2 years of one another. It doesn't matter which order those two transactions occur in, but it is a hard and fast rule that they must occur within 2 years of one another. If it's not, unfortunately, the benefit is not going to be available at all. So that's something to keep in mind if you or your clients are taking a look at taking advantage of that particular benefit. So that was how Prop 19 expanded one benefit. On the other hand, it restricted the benefit for transfers between parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren. So under the old law, Prop 58 and 193, they had to do with parent-child and grandchild transfers, but we'll just talk in terms of parent-child transfers. So under Prop 58, a parent could transfer their home, their principal residence to their child, and along with its low tax base without any reassessment. All the child would have to do is apply for the benefit. It did, and also importantly, it didn't matter how the value of that principal residence at the time of the transfer. It could be worth $100,000. It could have been worth $10 million. If it was the principal residence, parents could pass it along to the kids with a tax base without any upward adjustment to the taxes or tax base. In addition to that, Parents could also pass along up to $1 million in value of other real property. So that includes things like commercial property, industrial property, rental real estate, vacation homes, anything that wasn't the principal residence. So up to $1 million in value, they could transfer that along to the kids too without reassessment. So Prop 19 made some major changes to that. Now, the exclusion only applies to the principal residence. So if you own a home and a vacation home and you intend to pass both of them along to your kids, only when the vacation home is passed along, it will be reassessed at market value as of the transfer date. There's no exclusion available for that one. When it comes to the principal residence, there is still an exclusion that is available for that. But one thing to take note of is they've also added a $1 million limitation on the transfer of the principal residence. So there's a calculation that's involved. Essentially, if you're at the time of the transfer, the market value of the home is worth less than $1 million, the child can inherit the parent's property and its tax base without any reassessment. If the property is worth more than $1 million, there's a value comparison formula that has to be used. And we can get into that calculation in Q&A if you want. It really lends itself to some numerical example, but we can touch on that a little bit later. There was one other thing. Oh, this is probably the most important change for many. So under the old law, you could inherit the property and its tax base. And to do that, you would have to file a Prop 58 exclusion claim form. You had up to 3 years or before the property is transferred to a third party to file it. Now that application process is the same for the claim form, but in addition, the child that inherits the property must also move into the home and file a homeowner's exemption or disabled veterans exemption in connection with the property within 1 year of the transfer. So that's very important. As of right now, as the law is written, if the child were to move into the property or file the homeowner's exemption beyond that 1 year, they will be ineligible for the benefit in its entirety. So that's something that we've been stressing very much in our presentations, because it's a requirement that wasn't there before, and it's going to be something that most people typically didn't pay attention to in the past, because the homeowner's exemption, frankly, it's usually a very small percentage of the taxable value. So whether or not in a given year a homeowner had it applied or not, it didn't make a whole difference. But when it comes to property inheritance under Prop 19, it's a major component. So that's something that I would highly encourage you to make sure you note for your clients. Okay, and so we touched on this a little bit, the value comparison test. That's kind of the shorthand rules. And then finally, before we wrap up on kind of the overview of these two programs, I wanted to mention our website. So we recently redid our website, and one of the things that the assessor was adamant about was the creation of what he calls the Real Estate Toolkit webpage. And that page has a lot of resources and guides that relate to frequently asked questions that we receive from the public, as well as our real estate partners. It covers important things like property data change requests. So if you're looking to sell a property and you realize that the information that you have with regard to square footage or bedroom bathroom count doesn't match up with what we have in our records, you can fill this. This webpage has information on how you can inform our office and request a review of that information. There's also a supplemental property tax calculator. So if you're buying a new home or helping a client purchase a new home, they want to know what supplemental taxes they're going to be responsible for. There's a calculator that's very handy with that. There's also information that helps give an idea on how our office calculates the market value for property. So like I said, in many cases, we will accept the purchase price that a new home buyer paid for their property. But in some cases, we may deviate from that a little bit. And then finally, there's information on Prop 19 and ADUs. And we don't have a slide for it here, but one thing I'll point out is on our Prop 19 webpage, there is a very helpful Prop 19 calculator feature. Essentially, what it helps you do is you will input the assessor identification number or the street address for the property that you're looking at, along with some fair market value information, and it will help you and your client estimate what their expected future tax base will be. So what, after they take advantage of these various programs, what can they expect to be paying their taxes on. That just about wraps up our overview and kind of explanation on these various programs. Again, we went through it pretty fast, and there are a lot of details involved with each. So if you have any questions, we're happy to take them. I've also included our contact information up on the screen here. So if you have any questions about this after we're done with our presentation today, please do feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way that we can.
Thank you so much, Robert. Wow, that's a lot of information. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions. Are you available to take some questions?
Absolutely. We're here to for as long as you guys need.
Awesome. Although I actually can't see anyone's question. Did anyone ask anything?
Yes, I have some a question from Calvin saying, what if I'm a contractor and I build the ADU for half the price?
Okay, perfect. So like I was talking about earlier, the way that we value new construction is we use something called the cost approach. And so, like I was saying, it generally has to do with what it costs to construct the ADU or any other type of new construction. What we use when we determine what it costs to build a particular improvement or structure, we use standardized cost manuals. So those are, I believe the title of the one that we use is Marshall and Swift. So they're based on general regional costs. So if you used very expensive materials or very cheap materials, or you were able to save on labor or something like that, that may be something that's unique to your particular new construction situation, but it may not be something that we are able to take into account when we're valuing it. You're always welcome to reach out to our appraisal staff. Usually it's at our district offices. You can contact the one that manages your property or your client's property, and they can let you know what the information that they use to come up with the new construction value. And of course, if you disagree with it, you can always appeal your assessment, whether it's a new construction, you purchase your home and you think we valued it at too much. There's something called the Assessment Appeals Board process. It's run through the Board of Supervisors. It's a branch of that office. And so essentially you would appear before the Assessment Appeals Board, say, oh, the assessor's office came up with this value for my new ADU, or when I purchased it, they came up with this value. We think it's too high. And you can provide evidence or data to suggest or to support your opinion of a lower value. We would show up and defend or give an explanation as to why we came up with our value, and the board will make a determination on what they think is appropriate. But just something to keep in mind. I know a lot of people have questions about their value, and if they ultimately disagree with us, it's not the end of the line. There's this other option that's available.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much. So now, what if we're not talking about new construction? What if we're talking about new addition? So let's say if my house is it's 2,000 square foot, and I want to add 1,000 square foot to my existing house. How is that going to be reassessed? Sure.
So one thing to point out is it is new construction. It might not be a totally new house. I guess the way to think of it is, if you're adding square footage, that's generally going to constitute new construction. What we would do is we would take a look. Say you've got a house and you're adding a new bedroom, bathroom, suite on the back. It's attached to the home or detached. We would take a look at that structure. You would conceivably or presumptively apply with the city for building permits. They would send that our way so that we're aware that there's new construction going on at the property. And when it's done, we would go in, take a look, and again, using those cost manuals I was talking about, determine what the general value added to the property is. And so it depends on the extent to which the new construction is. So again, if you're adding on very little, it's going to be the reassessment is going to be less than if you were adding on square footage that essentially doubles the square footage of the house. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if you had questions again about, I'm looking at doing this, kind of what is going to be the approach, I would recommend reaching out to our appraisal staff, because they're the folks at our office that do this day in and day out, and they could give you a real good explanation.
Got it. And And I'm guessing from the sound of it, either you add a new addition or a new construction of a new ADU. If I'm going to add 1,000 square foot to my house, it's pretty much the same assessment procedure or reassessment procedure as me adding 1,000 square foot ADU.
So I would say that my general answer is yes, because again, when we do new construction valuation, it has to do with that cost approach. It does get a little bit, one thing I'll say is because a lot of the ADU ordinances that have been passed and SB 9 and things like that have passed, they have to do with kind of the housing shortage in California. So one of the factors that is taken into account when we value property is what is the highest and best use of something. So if you build an addition to your home, like you add on to your principal structure, it's presumably adding to your particular enjoyment of the property. But if you were to add an ADU, potentially you could be renting that out. So that may be a factor that's taken into account by our appraisers. It may essentially be adding more value to the property, because if someone were to come in and buy your home with the ADU, it could be worth more with the ADU because they could rent it out than it would be with just added square footage to the principal residence. So in my mind, it may be slightly different, but again, depending on the circumstances in the area, that may be something you want to reach out to the appraiser on.
Got it. Okay. I got a question that was sent directly to me. Sam had a question. I live at a property that the city uses. I'm guessing a part of his property is used for a sewage. Is there a way to annex that sewage area to reduce his square footage and taxes?
So it sounds like it may be like a utility easement of some kind. Off the top of my head, I frankly can't give an authoritative answer on that. I know that our mapping division and ownership division, they deal sometimes with these types of easements. It depends on the extent to which it interferes with the principal owners of the property's use and enjoyment of the property. But in many cases, an easement is it doesn't detract from the value of the property. So again, if he has questions about that, he can reach out to our mapping department, and they may have some information on how that's dealt with as far as assessment purposes. And actually, they could reach out to our appraisal staff, because the information that our mapping department comes up with, it's transmitted along to our appraisal staff, and they would be able to provide an information on, oh, when we're valuing this property, we take into account that this utility easement is there and that it can't be used, or the law requires us to assess the property in its entirety. So yeah, scratch that. I think our appraisal staff would be best able to answer that.
Appraisal staff, how can we reach the appraisal staff again?
Yeah, sure. So on our website, there is a contact us section. I believe the item that comes up on the drop-down menu is a directory, and that will provide a list of our district offices. And it has the phone number, I believe hours and street address for those offices. So they can just give that phone number a call, ask to speak with the appraiser of the day. And what they'll want to have handy is their 10-digit assessor identification number. It's the number that appears on your tax bill. It's what helps us identify your particular piece of property. So that's what anyone who has any questions, that's what they'd want to have handy. And I think Aldo is sharing our website right now.
Thank you so much, Aldo. You read my mind. I was just like going to go in and start typing in. Thank you so much. Man, I'm getting a lot of direct messages. Aldo, do you have any question on your side?
Yes, I have a direct message. Let's see, I did have that one about how do we reach the appraisal staff. So thank you for answering that, Robert. Let's see, I think Aaron, a question from Aaron saying, can you repeat the math when calculating the Prop 19 tax assessment?
Yeah, sure. So there's a calculation that's done with both the Prop 19 base year value transfers for seniors, and then one for the transfer from parent to child. So I can go through both of those one by one. So we'll take the base year value transfer first. So if If you purchase a replacement property that is worth less than your original property, you can transfer over your tax base without any upward adjustment. So it's just like the old law, Prop 6090. The calculation comes into effect when you purchase a replacement property that is more expensive than the original property that you sell. So let me jot down some numbers here real quick. So say you own your home, you pay your taxes on $100,000 in value. When you sell that home, you sell it for $400,000. You decide that you're going to treat yourself and you're going to upgrade. So you purchase a much larger home for $700,000. When you transfer your tax base over, you'll transfer over that $100,000 that you're paying your taxes on. But because essentially you're upgrading, we can't let you do that without an upward adjustment, or the law won't allow that without an upward adjustment. So what we add to that $100,000 tax base is the difference between the sales price of your original property and the purchase price of your replacement property. So you purchased your replacement property for $700,000. You sold your original property for $400,000. So the difference is $300,000. You would add that onto your $100,000 tax base. So $100,000 tax base plus that $300,000 difference, you will be paying your taxes on the replacement property on $400,000 instead of the $700,000 that you purchased it for. So essentially, you can think of it as you transfer over your tax base and then you add the difference between the two sales and purchase prices. So that's the calculation that is done when you're a senior citizen or disabled property owner and you're going to sell your original home and purchase a replacement home. The other kind of more convoluted calculation has to do with parent-child transfers. So, like I was saying, if you have a parent-child transfer, say mom and dad own property, they pass away, it is inherited by child. There are two situations. If the property at the time of the transfer is worth $1 million or less, the child will be able to inherit the parent's property tax base without any adjustment, so long as they meet all the Prop 19 requirements that we talked about. So say, for example, mom and dad own a home for $200,000. They purchased it a long time ago. They never did anything to it, and so they were able to keep this low tax base. When at the time of the transfer, they pass away and it transfers to their child, the value of the property has increased a bunch. The area was good to them, so it was worth $900,000. Because the property was worth less than $1 million, the child will be able to inherit the parent's property tax base, property and their property tax base of $200,000. So even though the child has a home, inherited it at a time when it was worth $900,000 in the market, they're able to get mom and dad's $200,000 tax base because they fell below that $1 million threshold. The more convoluted calculation, like I was talking about earlier, is say we'll use the similar example. Mom and dad purchased property a long time ago. At the time that they passed away, they were paying taxes on $200,000. At the time of the transfer, though, if they had sold the property on the open market, the property was worth $1.5 million. So what we would do in that situation is we would compare two figures. One is the parent's tax base, $200,000, and the other is the fair market value, the $1 million minus $1 million. And so that's $500,000. So what Prop 19 requires us to do is take the greater of those two values, the $200,000 parents' tax base, and then that fair market value minus $1 million, $500,000. So the child will be able to will inherit a part of their parents' property tax base, and based on the market value, they will be paying their taxes on $500,000 moving forward. So we'll compare that in another way, the $1 million. So again, same example. At the time that the parents passed away, they're paying their property taxes on $200,000. They pass away. At the time that they passed away, the market value of the property was $1.1 million. So that's different from the 1.5 we talked about earlier. We do that same value comparison, $200,000 versus 1.1 minus $1 million. We have to take the greater of those two figures. So in this case, mom and dad's $200,000 tax base versus the $100,000 calculated value. The child would be able to inherit their parents' property tax base of $200,000 moving forward. So the maximum benefit that they can get is carrying their parents' tax base forward. They won't get a reduction based on that $1 million calculation. So in this case, like I said, that based on that $1 million or fair market value minus $1 million, that difference is going to be $100,000, but they're not going to be paying on a lower value than their parents did. So they would just take along their parents' value. So I know that's a lot of numbers. It's pretty confusing. On our website, on that Prop 19 webpage, we do have fact sheets that walk you through those calculations and formulas with numbers that are probably much easier to understand than the ones that I just used. But if you have questions, I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. Those fact sheets, they are very clear and very helpful, and they walk you through it in prose or worded language as well as in a graphical way. So again, I think that those are very helpful.
And I did share the link, Robert, on the chat, so you are able to access the Prop 19 calculator. It is under one of the tabs. If you go to click the link, that's our Prop 19 page, but one of the tabs has calculators. If you play around with the calculators, you'll get a better sense of in understanding the Prop 19 reassessments for both base year value transfers and parent-to-child transfers.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, man. That's also a very, very valuable information. And I guess we can also do this all day long, right? With all the different numbers out there.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll take one more question. That is, I don't want to take it related to this Prop 19, because I think if we want to find more information, if Prop 19, the website doesn't answer all the questions, can we email you directly?
Yeah, you're certainly welcome to email us, call our office. We're always happy to help. Just to let you know, if someone is to call in and say, oh, I'm looking at doing this, am I going to get reassessed? We generally will give them kind of, new construction gets reassessed, changes in ownership, transfers get reassessed. Prop 19 kind of has this general information, but we try to eschew or avoid advice, just because people are going to want to rely on their own professionals, attorneys, CPAs, things like that. We just don't want to put people in a situation where they get themselves into trouble. They think that they're going to qualify for a particular benefit, but they don't. Another resource, I think that our website is very helpful and very comprehensive. But one thing I'll point out is if there are questions that are not answered on our website, it may be because there is information that is still being developed with regard to Prop 19. There is another agency, it's a state agency called the Board of Equalization, or BOE. And the difference between, and essentially what they're responsible for is the regulation of property taxation practices across the state. So like you were pointing out at the beginning of the presentation, property tax law in California is uniform throughout the state. So, Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, we are all following the same law. So you should be able to go to any county's website and find the same information. But the reason I mentioned the BOE is because the assessor's office, we have to follow the law word for word. We can't make any type of creative interpretations and do any type of mental gymnastics when it comes to the law. We have to follow it as it's written. When there is a lack of clarity in the law, though, the Board of Equalization does have some leeway to interpret what some of the gray area means. And so when it comes to Prop 19, at least initially, there were a lot of gray areas. And so they were very instrumental in providing us with guidance on how we should administer portions of Prop 19 that fell into those gray areas. Like I said, there have been some legislative developments that clarify a lot of them, but again, this Board of Equalization website that Aldo included in the chat, it can be helpful if you didn't find the answer you were looking for on our website.
Thank you so much. We have I think this one might be a really quick one. So what happens if there's a more square footage listed on the tax record and which is permitted, so like, let's say if my house is 2,000 square foot, but then online it says 1,500 square foot. And then if I get it, if I go to the assessor office and tell them, hey, this is actually 2,000 square foot, am I going to get reassessed if I do that?
So if our records show that you have a smaller square footage than you actually have,
yes.
So probably. So what'll happen is you can go onto our website on that form section. I believe that the forms icon is right in the middle of the main menu. If you hover over, or if you click on it and then search data, the DATA, the form that will come up is called a property data change request form. And what that is used for is for property owners or property owner agents to realtors. It is a mechanism by which they can submit change requests to our office. So like you said, your home is 2,000 square feet. You look it up on the assessor's website. We just have 1,500 square feet. You can fill out that form, indicating that, and you'll want to, if you have any records, building plans, building permits, certificates of occupancy, things like that, you can send that you can email it along with that form into our office, and it will be assigned to appraisal staff so that they can review and adjust our records if necessary. But generally, whenever we find out about new construction, whether it's right away when it happens or sometime down the line, we are required to reassess the property like I was describing earlier. So if you notice that you built something and you're not being taxed right away, you might want to reach out to our office and just double check and see if we have information with regard to that. So you don't want to end up 4 years down the line, having not been reassessed based on the new construction, have us find out about it and we reassess. And what we would have to do at that point is, you could get, I believe in most cases, up to 4 years of escape assessment tax bills. And they're all due. And most people will be thinking, oh, well, I was going to be paying this anyways. But if you report or we reassess you timely, you'll be able to pay on that new higher reassessed value year after year. But if we reassess sometime down the road and we have to issue back taxes, they're all going to be due at once. So say, for example, you get reassessed and then for 4 years, and we reassess timely, for the next 4 years, you would maybe have, say, an extra $1,000 that you're paying on, which is a lot of money, but it could be manageable for most homeowners. If we reassess 4 years down the line and we have to go and issue back taxes for those last 4 years, all of a sudden you have all these bills that amount to $4,000 all at once. And even though it kind of comes out to the same dollar amount, just the timing, it can be a little bit easier if you're paying it, in pieces.
Yeah, it can be pretty taxing.
Sure, and I used a kind of a small example there, but we've seen situations where that escape assessment kind of obligation on the taxpayer is very high, and those can be very unfortunate situations. So that's why you'd want to make sure we have all the information we need to go ahead and take a look at your property.
Well, I'm glad we touched on that, because it can be 10 years, it can be 15 years before someone finds out, because records were not very good back then, right? And then as technology gets better and better, like, you find out that you bought a house 5 years ago and then this was done 15 years ago. Do you then go back to the last owner to?
Right, so we do have certain statute of limitations laws that allow us to go back only so far. So we will say you purchased the home 5 years ago, but the previous homeowner had added on a large portion of the home 15 years ago. We would go back to that new construction completion date. We would reassess as of that date. The new values would trend forward up to the present. But the unfortunate thing about that situation is because we can only go back tax 4 years, essentially you as the new homeowner are only going to be the only party that's going to be responsible for the back taxes, because we're not going far back enough to reach the old owner or the original owner. So it may be a little bit different. Say, for example, you purchased it 2 years ago, they might be responsible for the last 2 years that they own the property, but it all sort of depends. It's fact specific, but the general rule is we're able to go back and issue back taxes for 4 years.
4 years. Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you so much. Well, I think this concludes. Wow, it took a lot longer than 30 minutes. Thank you so much, Robert, for your time. We really, really appreciate it. I know we still have a lot of questions. Feel free to send them to me, and then I can forward it to Robert or the LA County Assessor Office, and we can get them all answered individually. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, Benson. Thank you for having us. I think I speak for Aldo and our entire office, but we're always happy to come and share information about what we're doing and how our office functions. It's a good way for us when we speak with groups like yours, who have contact with a lot of different property owners, to get some of that information out there. So thank you very much for that.
I'm already looking forward to our next meeting, like something like this. I don't know when yet, but I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having us.
Thank you. All right, now for those who are still here, thank you again for attending. We actually are running out of time. We have about 13 minutes. I think I want to wrap up this meeting. Originally I was going to talk about how to find capital for your ADU, for building that extra square footage. And man, unfortunately I don't think we can go through with that meeting. We'll probably have to reschedule that. And any last minute question for me and my team? Let's see. I'm going to see if Aldo, do you still see any questions?
No, I don't have any more questions, and I did try to answer some of the questions that folks had, just by replying to them. I think we pretty much covered everything.
Awesome. Let me
and
see.
The presentation slides are available. I did upload them via PDF file, so if anyone wants to download it through the chat box, you can. I will also be sending it to Benson, and he can forward it to anybody that requests it.
Okay. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Let's see.
Hey Benson, do you have a recording for this?
Absolutely. We're going to Aldo is going to send me the recording, and we're going to be uploading it to our YouTube, and also we're probably going to dice it up into bite-sized pieces, and then we can post it on social media. So make sure you guys are following us on our social media as well.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to contact our team, guys. We have direct access. Obviously, we work with the county assessor office a lot. And if you guys have any questions, email us, call us, contact us. We're here for you. We're here to, if you want to further talk about how to accumulate capital for your next investment, reach out to us. We would love to have a one-on-one conversation with you as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Benson. See you soon.
See you. Thank you.